Sear, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Sear is a super cool product because it's going to help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is going to help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Sear.
Down for.
Are you ready?
I am now. I'm down for whatever.
Like zero indication that I'm going to start recording the podcast episode and just saying like, you're literally mid-sentence. I love it.
That's okay. I mean, I should have assumed nothing less than that.
Shenanigans?
Yeah.
You should have assumed shenanigans. We all know who I am.
But it's just us two today on the podcast.
Yeah. So let's see if I can talk about enough obnoxious crap today to fill that void of not having a third.
I think that you can. I think you'll do a great job.
Well, I mean, we'll find out.
Yeah.
So what are we talking? It's a weird topic. And lessons learned as a client that changed it all. And like, I don't know, because I feel like, and maybe I'm just like dumb, or maybe I'm, I don't know, ego driven. I feel like I personally did not learn a lot of like lessons as a client.
I was actually so interested when Christina sent this because I was thinking in my head, what did you learn? Because you had a coach when you did, like when you competed like that first time. Did you have a coach the second time? Paul kind of helped you, but I feel like he was just like giving you some guidance. He wasn't really coaching you that second time.
Yeah, so this last time, it wasn't like Paul kind of jumped in to give me an objective eye for like the last maybe 5 weeks.
Right.
Maybe 5 or 6 weeks. And really it was just like, hey, Stephen, you're being a bit of a bitch. You probably need to do like 225 carb instead of 300 if you want to keep getting leaner at this point. And lo and
Calling you out
behold,
on your fit.
yeah. And well, I mean, it was more about like the objective eye, like,
Absolutely.
because I didn't want to have to cut more. And I was pretty lean already at that point, but I still needed to be a little bit leaner because, I'm not the biggest dude and that shit matters. So like, really my conditioning was the reason I did as well as I did. But
So
there's
maybe
something about like,
maybe what you learned was like you as a client, when it comes to something like pushing like that, an objective eye can be really helpful for you.
yeah, and I think I already knew that. Like there was no question in my mind about that because I was like, okay, I'm to the point where I'm no longer being objective with things.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm not making the progress that I need to still, particularly for the timeline. So let me get somebody else that's not like emotionally or physically invested in what my numbers are.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to make a more objective like change or assertion about what needs to happen there. But if I go back like before Paul, because Paul had coached me for some of my other shows, but again, like I was in school during that time. So I feel like for me, there wasn't any like life-changing thing that came out of those that like, oh, made it all make sense. Now I'd say before those preps, I learned a lot of like what not to do or things that I didn't like.
So talk about that.
Yeah. So like I learned that I don't like meal plans. That I don't think meal plans are a super valid way to go. Or at the very least, not a meal plan that you are not involved in making for yourself or making for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Because like I remember my first meal plan, I actually have it like in the drawer over here. It's still typed out on paper and everything. I hate grapefruit, like to the point where it makes me gag and want to throw up. There's grapefruit. I was supposed to have a half grapefruit every morning for some reason. Why not an orange? Why not something else? Like my salads, I was supposed to have apple cider vinegar and olive oil only. Okay, well, why?
Yeah.
So like that stuff, and I'll be honest, I did most of it. But man, it sucked. Um,
Yeah.
but like that was the coaching industry. I mean, still to a large degree, that is the coaching industry today.
Hmm.
So I feel like for me, like most of my education stuff came from school, reading research papers, sometimes talking to other people. Like I'll talk to Brett, or I'll talk to Dr. Joe. I feel like Paul and I are on pretty much the same wavelength on a lot of things. Um, so unless he's been talking to somebody where like I haven't been, so I feel like more of the stuff I learned from him is like through his involvement with like the IFBB and the Pro League stuff, right?
Hmm.
I glean a lot of stuff by that, but that's not really like me being a client stuff. That's like coaching the sports stuff.
It's you being a coach. Yeah, that's why I wanted to hear. I was like, I wonder if we could almost like switch it to things that we learned like as coaches. Or like seeing how things have evolved because things have evolved a lot. And
Not always for the better.
this is true. I didn't say good or bad. Um, but I think it's also nice to hear from that perspective as well, right? Like I know that we're always very client centered and like that obviously that's why we do this. It's for our clients, but as coaches, it's important for us to also learn and grow and evolve and fuck up and like all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I was kind of talking to my client about this because she came to me after quitting her last coach, being very unhappy with that. And I was talking because they're local, so I was at the gym and we had like a few hour long conversation. And some of it was about like the feedback loop that we need as coaches if we're going to get better or if we're going to understand you or serve your needs better.
Mhm.
And so understanding that you have to have that open communication. And so I think it will kind of go both ways, maybe, right? For what we talked about. Because some of it's going to be like, okay, stuff as coaches that maybe we learned and we needed, but also like some of the biggest things that I feel like maybe clients are having to learn to get the most out of the coaching and client relationship or to be the best athlete you can be.
Yeah.
And to get those things out of that too. Because when she left that coach, she didn't give them any feedback. She was just like, all right, I'm gonna go in a different direction. I'm gonna do something else now. But like she was pissed off at the coach and she was hurt. You know what I mean? So like there was a lot of feedback that probably should have happened there to give that coach an opportunity to get better. Like
Mhm.
an opportunity to take that feedback and say, oh wow, yeah, I really dropped the ball. I need to make sure that I don't do that again. Or, oh wow, I really didn't recognize how the way that I was communicating this or the way that I was doing something really made you feel worse about the process instead of better.
Mhm.
Or my processes could be better. Like I could do this in a better way. But I think that like the communication thing, for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's lots of them, um, it's just one of I feel like it's the first thing to go when it's probably one of the most important pieces of the process. Not to say that it has to be over communication, but like the base communication of, hey, these are the things that are going on. These are the important things in my week. These are the things that are like impacting the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, whenever I have a client leave, like even if it's leaving because they can't, like it's financial or like life circumstances, um, I ask them for feedback. Like I say, hey, like, is there anything that you can tell me that I could maybe do better or that you really liked that I am doing really well? Like what kind of the part of the process is like working for you or what part of the process didn't work for you, right? Because it's hard to hear those things sometimes if it's things that obviously didn't work for that client. But it just allows you to get better and like look at your processes differently and ask yourself, are there ways that I could have done that differently? Or like maybe for the next client, like the way that I approach lifestyle clients has evolved a lot like differently than my competitors for obvious reasons, right? Their goals are very different. And a lot of times their mindsets just are in a different place, and that's good. Like that's okay. And that's valid, but it requires like a slightly different hand in terms of coaching. And I know that I wasn't always open to that, like at the beginning, because it's not how I as a athlete would maybe like to be coached, but that's also because I'm a competitor. I'm not a lifestyle person.
But I feel like that's also like that can be a huge difference between competitor to competitor also though.
Oh, yes.
Because I don't like I don't like the your entire life should revolve around competition thing. I
Yeah.
don't even care if you're in prep. Like your
Yeah.
life should not be competition. There are
I
very
agree.
few people whose lives I think should revolve around competition. And like I've done well as a coach. I've had top 5 pro placings, right? Multiple. Um, I just don't think it needs to be that way. Um, and from my experience, I feel like most people who get that way, because I think that's what the assumption is for lots of people, is that if you're a competitor, like this is all you live for, it's all you do, like it's the number one thing in your life, and that's what matters most. And like if that's the truth for you, like man, you're gonna mess some things up in life. Like
Yeah.
I
What
know,
happens when bodybuilding's done, right?
but like even during bodybuilding, like if you're in prep and you're always grumpy or mad or in a crap mood and you're treating your significant other like trash all the time, do you think that they're going to be supportive of that? Absolutely not. They're definitely not. Like they might not even put up with that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like I feel like what happens is and it's that all or nothing mentality, right? And then if you get your identity too caught up in it, that's a problem too. But because you're not paying attention to all the other things that are still going to be there after the show, after your competition career is done, hopefully, like the stuff in life that was there years and years before it, like so many people get into this habit of just letting all the other stuff go when you can't let it all go completely. Like maybe you have to back off some of it, sure, right? Find like that. And again, it's like the moderation, like the healthy medium, right? Like all things are okay in moderation for the most part, or
Mhm.
for a season, even. But like you can't always want to be lean. You can't never like have a date night with your significant other. You can't like never spend the holiday with your family and expect to have a good relationship.
Yep. Or like there are those like personal relationship things which are important. Like not my first prep, my second prep, I when I was really lean, I was really grumpy a lot of the time. And I was like not a fun person to hang around, and I needed to check myself on that. Like that was something that looking back at it, I was like I need to do a better job of that. Because I would just give in to those like feelings of tired and like feeling like you're a dead human. And so communicating that with your significant others, but it's also like, what about like your job, right? Like your job, career advancements, and those types of things like usually also matter. And like you can't just be showing up to your job all of the time and like eating out of your little prepared meals and being that like person that just sits in the corner of the office and like doesn't converse with anybody and all of that because they're scared of what people are going to think about their food or whatever like it's
Unless you hate
it's
everybody and then go for it.
and you know what, cool,
If
if
they're
that's
all stupid and you're the best and the hardest worker and none of them are worth your time, yes, absolutely go for it.
yeah, but you're right, like it it's possible, like people I actually had this conversation with somebody, like I want to say last week, like it's possible to do a competition prep, and like there's going to be times where it's really fucking hard to not give in to that stuff, um but like you can still go out and be social, and you can still have fun times with your kids, and you can still have a date night. It just maybe like do something that doesn't center around food, like go out bowling if you're in prep.
Or do a date night at home where you cook together.
Yeah.
So then you're in control of what you want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
like it can still fit everything. You could even make different things with different ingredients for one another. Like there's a million ways to work around it.
Yeah, I think that that was something like that I learned as an athlete and my first few years of like being a bodybuilder or whatever. I didn't see that as like my identity fully, but like that was just that was my focus. Like that was it. And I mean, to some degree, like because I did synchronized swimming for so long and that was such a big part of my identity. And then I kind of transitioned away from synchronized swimming. Like I was at a loss and I felt like bodybuilding like was that other thing for me. And so that's why it was so quote unquote easily fit into my identity. But at the end of the day, it wasn't, it was a piece of my identity, but it wasn't the whole thing. But I was like replacing synchro and the loss, I guess the loss of synchro with bodybuilding. And that's why I was just like so mentally and emotionally focused on it. But it caused me to like overthink and just be stressed all of the time about these like little tiny things that
Didn't matter.
didn't really matter. Like really didn't matter.
Oh, no, wait,
Um
let's finish that. They wouldn't have mattered, but because you were so stressed out, you made them matter.
yeah. Yeah. And like that was something that like I haven't been on stage since 2020 and like that away time from stage for me was really good because it allowed me to like just chill out. And so many people don't see even like an extended off season always as like this good thing. They're like, well, when can I get on stage again? When is that timeline? And I can relate to that because I was like that. But when I stepped off stage in 2020, I realized that I needed to actually back away from it. Like it just like kind of hit me that I was like, okay, I'm not progressing anymore. And
Which we had that conversation before we entered prep to that show.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we
Like
did. Um
like we
and that
said,
was
we're not going to be better this time.
right. And that was good. Like that was good. I still like finished off my prep strong. I still like, took shit seriously in my reverse diet, like within reason, but like,
You did pretty good for the most part.
yeah,
There were a couple like shenanigans. I think like there was a Mexico trip where you kind of
yeah,
went off a bit, but like for the most part, you were pretty dialed in still.
yeah. And yeah, it's just like it's nice. It's freeing to know that you can still do these things that mean a lot to you, but it doesn't need to be your full identity. And I really gave into other parts of like things that I enjoyed. Like I started pole fitness and I
It's so
I
much
started
fun, right?
it's
The,
fucking painful.
the only oh yeah, dude, especially like when you wreck your nuts on the pole.
Yeah, the nut wrecking is not a great thing.
I have done pole dancing fitness stuff before.
Oh God.
It is a lot
I
of fun.
I'm terrified that you've done that.
There's videos somewhere on the internet of that.
Oh my God.
I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so it wasn't like super sexy, but
It's
I
too
was like
bad
the
you weren't
one
wearing
dude
that
there.
like onesie in the background.
Oof, oof.
You would have been able to hang on to the pole a lot more. Um,
Need the baby
anyways,
powder
that's
at that
something that
point.
that's something that I learned that like as a client. I think that that's my biggest thing that I learned as a client. To like let go of some of those things.
So I think like it's this weird thing with like the identity, right? And so
Mm,
for some of us, we're coming into fitness and we want to change our identity. And so like we see ourselves as this person who's out of shape, or we may have a lot of negative connotations with like our body image and some other things. So like we are trying to change our identity. And so often we look at identity as a static thing that it doesn't change. This is who I am, and who I am never, it's never going to have any variation. But like that's kind of a bogus way to look at identity because it's not real. Like
mm,
I have changed dramatically over the past decade. Now, in my interests, the things that I want to do more, the things that I want to do less, and the things that I prioritize. Like when I met my wife, I've never been a gift giver ever in my life. And like when we started dating, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get her this because it made me think of her and it'll make her smile. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like this isn't who I am. I'm like, well, I guess it's who I am now.
Yeah.
So like you have to understand that those pieces of your identity are going to like there's going to be flux there that they're going to move. They're not a stable thing. And so there may be pieces of your identity that are pretty stable, right? Like, okay, I came from a single parent household. I had a single mom. Like those are things that aren't going to change. They're always going to impact me. But that doesn't mean that, for example, like with those things, I have to always go towards the same response that maybe those would have influenced me for in specific situations. Um, and vice versa. Like it doesn't mean I have to like playing. I wanted to be a rock star. I don't want to play guitar all the time anymore. Like I still enjoy it, but I enjoy it as a hobby when I feel like it, not all the time. You know, I enjoy shooting guns. I don't always want to go shoot guns. I'm not a gun guy. Like it's just one of the things that maybe I like to do here and there. You know,
Yeah.
and so like bodybuilding can be the same. And quite often I think we're trying to get into bodybuilding and get into fitness and get into these things to like make a lot of negatives positives, or that's like our perception of that. And sorry for getting so deep, everybody. I know it's like I don't even know what day this is going to go out. I know it's a whatever random day of the week it is where this is too much for life. You know what I mean?
I'm
But
loving
like,
it. Continue.
so it's one of those things where, yeah, it can do a lot of really good things. Bodybuilding can provide a ton of great benefits. Competing can provide a ton of great benefits. But just like many other things, it also can fuck your life up and make it worse if you allow it to, and if you allow it to get like too far off the beaten path. And so, like, that's what I like about like working with people that are going to compete and aren't going to compete is finding like, okay, where's that middle line of we're doing enough, but we're not doing too much.
Yeah.
And I think like that's where that communication comes in of like, if you're really feeling fatigued and shitty all the time, right? And I've definitely grown as a coach to be more available for free meals and for cheat meal or not cheat meals, but refeeds and diet breaks. Like if you're really circling the drain, if you let me know, like I as a coach also now have the opportunity to give you a diet break, to give you an extra refeed, to cut cardio in half for the next couple days, to tell you to take a couple days off of the gym, to help with your recovery and your energy levels and try and hopefully support you feeling better. Because if you're feeling that way, we're not going to be getting typically as good of a response anyways.
Yeah, it's I find, and like I again identified with this very early in my client kind of like journey, I guess. Probably within the first like year of working with you, but then after that I was like, fuck, I don't need to do that anymore. But I feel like there are a lot of clients that really want to like please their coaches or want to like impress their coaches um in their check-ins, right? And so like maybe they won't say that they're struggling with things, or they won't share aspects of their life like they're moving countries, or they have a death in the family, or something that's like very, very impactful, or not even like that deep. Like it's like that you're sore every day and you're really struggling to hit your macros and you're really food focused. Like it, and so they won't say those things. And they're like, oh yeah, I hit plan, great work, right? And so if we think that things are good, then we're gonna keep with the plan. But I don't think, like I am never expecting like I'm not impressed with the fact that a client is hitting protocol. Let's say. Like
So,
I know that sounds rough, but like I don't want my clients to please me.
but that's a weird thing, right? Because like we all get our ego or fulfillment from something, right?
Yeah.
So for some of us, it's like I'm a good person and that makes me feel good about myself. Like that's where you derive that meaning from. For others, it's I work really hard and that's what I feel good about. So I feel like a lot of the people that tend to do that are people that if that you pride yourself on working harder,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you are also getting this odd sense of fulfillment because you're doing something really difficult, even though it might be able to get better results doing it in a manner that's not so damn difficult.
Mm-hmm. It's like the lowest effective or yeah, lowest
Yeah,
effective.
minimal effective dose.
Thank you. Like I even fucking wrote that down in my notes. Minimal effective dose. Fine. Um, but yeah, I feel like I have a client right now who checked in today, and a few weeks ago she's looking for a new job, and she's just about to like leave her rental, and she's also about to she's trying to find an apartment in a new city, and like there's a lot of life stuff, and she's a competitor. And there's a lot of life stuff right now, like all of her friends and family or where she lives currently. So there's a lot of moving parts to her life. And I loved that she was sharing that with me, and I could see in her adherence that it was kind of sketchy. And I was like, listen, why don't we just have like a few on track days? And like, is that going to help you? And I usually have this like back and forth with them, or I just give it as part of their protocol. And I'm like, hey, if you don't feel like you need this, that's cool. Like, just track your food and hit your numbers. But like, I want to give this to you here if we need it. And these are usually clients who I've already been working with them for a while, and I know that they're just not about to like go off the rails and whatever. And we talk about what those free meals might look like, but you know, she loved it. And like this week when she checked in, she said, "I'm loving having those extra meals to just spend time with my boyfriend and my family." She's still training hard. She's being smart. She's hitting her sleep. She's hitting her steps, like that kind of stuff. And that's cool because it's like a 3-week kind of phase. And she's like, okay, like, you know, in 2 weeks, we're going to be here. And then I'm going to be able to be a little bit more focused on my protocol. I'm like, great, that's wonderful. Um, that's the kind of back and forth that is so appreciated because it gives us an insight into what's going on and allows us to make changes to ride the midline better. Cause like that's where we really should be. Even if we're in a prep, like there's times when we need to push. But again, if you're pushing in a prep and you're in a peak week and you're stressing the fuck out about like your meal timing and like just random shit
Everything.
like that. Yeah, if you're
Just
just
everything.
stressing out, you're gonna fuck up your peak.
Well, it's just you're gonna look worse because you're gonna be stressed out. It's gonna
Yeah.
impact digestion. It's gonna impact how you're dealing with inflammation and the other stuff. And like, so here's the other thing. Like, say you need to grind for a little bit. Okay, cool. But if we have to grind for 16 weeks, like that's probably and especially like and so there, and I'll say this, there's a difference because calories are relative. So like what might be a low calorie intake for me that I have to diet on might not be the same for somebody else. They may have to diet more aggressively than me. There are obviously some rules that we use to still look at things relatively, but if you're just eating it and feeling it and getting wrecked and you're 16 weeks out and you're just feeling terrible, like that's not good news. Like that's not a great place to be. Now,
You
if it
still
was
got
a short,
16 weeks.
bro, like for real, like if you're have one of those coaches that has you on like 80 carbs and you're 16 weeks out and you're doing 7 hours of cardio a week already, I'm like, bro, what? Like,
Yeah.
dude, that's no good. And so, like, I get it. Like the sayings of it takes what it takes. It does. But I think that that also leaves open for the interpretation of, oh, well, this is what it takes. And it could be this really crazy protocol. I'm like, no, it doesn't take that. I've done it. I've seen it done many times. Like, that's not what it takes. You could do it with way less effort, or you could do it in a different way, or you could be less aggressive. Now, the answer to how to make that happen might be more time away from stage than they want, or more time away from dieting than they want, which is normally the answer
Yeah.
in those cases. But it's like, do you really want that? Because I feel like a lot of people who get into those positions was like, I'm just going to grind really hard and I can do this for 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever. And they're going to suck, but then I go back to normal and life is good. Like those are the ones That's when you have the weight rebounds. That's when you have those crazy weight regains, and body fat overshooting. And then just time after time after time, they get into a little bit worse place, and a little bit worse place, and a little bit worse place, until one day, then you're in this place where like, who the hell am I? What is going on? Like, how did I get here? And like, it was happening all along the way. So I feel like one of the other lessons we'll say that I think a lot of people need to really pay attention to learn is the long-term mindset. Not the 12-week plan, not the 16-week plan. Like, yeah, those things they have their value and they're important. But if you're not looking at also like the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, like we are missing out on a lot. And you may be making that plan either like impossible or very, very difficult to like make work based on what you're doing on those shorter terms for that immediate like gratification and terms of whatever goal it is that you're going after.
Yeah, it's the lack of patience. And I mean, I think I've said it before, but like we have said it, the time's going to pass anyways. And the person's goal is probably to keep whatever that result is, or like, if you're in a competition prep, obviously you can't keep your stage like leanness, but you don't want to rebound, right? I actually had a phone call with a consult last week, and she wanted to go into a fat loss phase. And I basically mapped out for her that it's going to take 6 months. And it was like, what? And I'm like, okay, well, when you start with a coach, the first few weeks, they're probably just like getting into the habit of checking in. How is your body responding to the protocol? Is it actually in a deficit, or are we maintaining? How is your adherence? Yeah, can you check in regularly? Navigating all of that stuff, like getting on a plan can be a lot when you've never really done that before. Even if you're tracking macros, just like starting with a coach and there's a bunch of expectations. My expectation is that you don't get everything right off the bat, but like that's going to take a few weeks to just like get into the habit.
And that would be quick. Like,
oh yeah.
Like some people, like, dude, especially if this isn't your lifestyle and you've not been doing this, like it's gonna take you longer to get to a place where you're feeling more confident and where you're really checking more of the boxes on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Or the people have been tracking their food, but not using a food scale. And so like, again, it's just building new habits, and that takes probably a month. So then it's like, okay, that's a month where we're just getting into the habit. And then we want to do a fat loss phase. Cool. Most like ideal place would be around 12 weeks. Yeah, this is a lifestyle client, like person. And I like kind of throw out that number. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, so I think that's a good lesson too, is that your estimates are probably further away than what you think they are.
Yeah.
We
Right.
also
Like
we talk about that a lot, right? We're all like, I don't really hard weigh my food most of the time, and yada this, and I don't have to do that. And I was like, okay, sure, but I also know that if I take too long away from the scale, like the number that it used to be when I looked at it ain't the number that it is when I'm looking at it now.
Right. Right, exactly. So, okay, so now we're at like most ideal situation for months down the road, but now we've finished the fat loss phase. We need to reverse diet out of that. And let's say 6 to 8 weeks for us to just get back to normalcy and maintain, or whatever that looks like. And
I'd
like
say
these are
depending on the
like
person, that's still a pretty short timeline.
absolutely. And so it's kind of like, but then we need to allow 4 to 6 weeks of you get sick, family emergency, travel, life shit, like I don't like just shit, vacations, you fuck up, whatever it is, it's cool. So then we're now at the end of May. Currently it is, oh my God, May 22nd. That's, I gave 6 months. If everything is like literally perfect, 6 to 7 to 8 months for us to do a fat loss phase and then get you back to normal. Right. And people like, that's like wild to people, the time frame. but it's like, hey, those 8 months are going to happen. So do you want it to happen and for you to have success, or do you want 4 months to happen where you crash diet and then rebound and now you're trying to do it again and then you're trying, like, it's, I think patience is so important
But I don't
in,
even know if it's just impatience at that point, because it's like they weren't looking at the second half of the goal. They're only looking at the first piece, which is like want to lose the weight.
yeah,
Like oftentimes we're not, or people aren't looking at what's after that. Like, okay, so like we'll be real, the research and the data is pretty clear that people are pretty damn good at losing weight.
yep.
It's the fact that it comes back after, and that back and forth, and how that impacts them, their lifestyle, all the rest of the stuff, right? Their health. And so if we actually go into the diet looking at what comes after the dieting phase is over, also, it really changes things to be more about like, all right, good. How do I set this up so in 5 years, I'm not just gaining and losing the same 20 pounds. I've lost the 20 pounds and I've kept it off. Right.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's a bigger deal than others, because like if your doctor's really on your case to lose the weight and your blood work's not great and like some of the other stuff's off with your health markers, like now it becomes even more important versus maybe somebody that's just losing the extra couple pounds for vanity's sake. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which cool. Like
Absolutely.
I'm vain. I get it. you know? But at the same point, I also have to be objective with myself to take a step back and say, okay, is my vanity here actually creating more issues than it's worth? Is it actually going to bite me in the ass and create more problems for me if I continue to do the things that I'm doing? And like that introspection is really hard for people,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you want to get
absolutely.
emotional.
So how would you how would you like talk a client through that?
I mean, I think it typically comes kind of like this conversation, right? Because one, I have to share experience, and I've been in the sport for over a decade at this
Mm-hmm.
point. And so if you think that everything's going to change because you win a show or because you win a pro card, like one, the people who are into the bodybuilding stuff, this is it's niche. There's not really as
Yeah.
many of us as you think. Um, and then even within that circle, people forget real quick. You're still like, you're going to go back to work. You're going to go, like, all the stuff in life is still going to be the same after that show. And so you have to take that into account in terms of how you're setting up your expectations for what comes next and what comes after. Because when you recognize that, it helps you not to over prioritize it. It helps you not to make the same decisions that dig that hole for you to try and get out of. And so that's a big part of it right there, is saying, all right, how do we have a healthy enough relationship with the sport or the diet or our physique goals so that we're not coming out of this lost and dazed and confused? Some people get it, some people don't. You can have all the conversations in the world you want. Like there's going to be a time when you're ready to hear something, and times when you could hear it a million times and it's never going to make a dent. Um, so you just have to prepare for that as best possible. And once that's done, it's like, because for me, I feel like the way that I go about things, it's like moving molehills, right? So
Yeah.
you're eventually making a mountain, but like I'm not trying to just get you to lose weight. That's not actually my goal. So maybe for a competitor, sure, the goal is to get stage lean. But for most people, the goal is to build better habits that support the physique you want, that support the health outcomes you want, that support the things that you're saying you want. Which that stuff is not overnight stuff. It's taking on something, mastering it to where it no longer takes some exorbitant amount of effort, and then moving on to the next thing. And then after 6, 8, 10 months, you look back, you're like, wow, like I'm a different person now. It's like, well, you're surrounding yourself with different people, maybe. You're surrounding yourself with different things. And the things that you're choosing to do that used to take a ton of effort because you weren't used to them are now second nature, and they don't take any of that mental acuity. It doesn't create stress. It doesn't make life worse anymore. Like the hard part is when people want to go all in, jump off the deep end, and then are like, oh shit, but like swimming's really hard when I do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've talked about like maintenance phases and things like that where like I'm not making changes to a client's plan for months, but it's intentional because we're managing stress or we are just like refining our processes. And a lot of times that's what it is. We're refining. We're refining. Um sure you're hitting your macros, but that doesn't mean that it's easy or that like you're good at it or prepared, or if something comes at you out of the blue that you're going to be able to adjust. um like you have to know that those things are going to happen. um you don't know when. But when you are refining and creating mastery, you can deal with that. Like when my fucking power went out, I still hit my fucking macros. Like I don't know. Like I had no power for 2 days. And I figured that shit out because I've been doing this for like years. And it was at that point, it was just like easy. And for me, it created more like structure for me. So I was just able to not worry about it. Plus, half of Houston had no power. So it's not like I could go to the grocery store because it was fucking closed. So I had to like figure that shit out.
Yeah, but
But
like for somebody that's been doing this like 3, 4, 5, 6 months, like and I think this was going to be my next thing is that like
yeah.
you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes, or
Mhm.
like oftentimes they're full of shit, right? You can't have the same expectation of yourself that you would have of somebody else or what they present.
Yep.
So like if you've been doing it 6 months and you're like, oh God, I'm not going to be perfect. Okay, great. Don't be
Yeah.
perfect. Just be as good as you can be. Figure it
Yep.
out to the best of your ability. Do what you can do. Who's going to ask any more of you than that anyways? Like, hey, did you do your best? Yeah, I absolutely did. Okay,
Well,
awesome. Like
yeah.
success.
Yep.
Did you not do your best? No, I just kind of effed off. Right? Okay, well, why? Like, let's figure out how do we make it so that in the future we're closer to like that place that you say you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I
Like, it's not
know.
that hard.
Yeah, it's and I think that like my point with what I was trying to say is, yeah, like I've been doing this for so long, it was easier for me. But that doesn't mean that it was easy for other people. I would not really have that expectation for my clients. Um, because everybody's very different. And you just like you do your best. I think I've said that like multiple times to clients this week because I don't know, my clients we're going through things. There's like life happening. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I'm just like, fuck yeah, you checked in. Like you showed up for yourself. My expectation is not perfection. My expectation is
Effort.
you do, yeah, like you just do your best and you try to show up for yourself in the ways that you can. And wonderful. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think like what I was getting at is that oftentimes people they follow these fitness personalities. They
Hmm.
follow these competitors. They follow these people who they feel like they want to look like. And it's like there could be a very large divide between your life and their life, who they are and who you are, right? Most of those people that people are looking at, like, this is kind of our livelihood to some degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be in the best shape in the world to be a great coach, but if I'm not in at least decent shape, people are going to look at that and there's going to be a problem. There's a disconnect, right? And so like if you're looking at a competitor, if you're looking at a fitness personality or somebody that's like remember, that's kind of their fucking job to do that. So
Yeah.
like your expectation of how you're going to manage things to look your best versus like what they're going to be able to do and like the realistic nature of that are going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's almost like the comparison. Is that what you're getting at?
100%.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you don't have fun, and then you don't celebrate your wins and your victories, and it takes a lot of the joy out of it. And then you're like, oh well, I didn't do this and that, I did this. I'm like, yeah, but look at all the things you did do right.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're caught in that comparison, because there's a lot of stuff like we don't control. I don't control your genetics. I don't control how big or small your waist is. I don't control how wide your shoulders are. I don't control how well you respond to training. You know what I mean? Like there's, and you don't control those things really to a large degree either. Like you got dealt a hand, and we're all just trying to play the best hand that we have. Like, but somebody who got dealt a way better hand, like guess what? They're gonna win probably the vast majority of the time there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And like, especially when it comes to bodybuilding, a lot of it's genetics. And that can be a very defeating thought, or it can be something that you're going to say, okay, well, I have what I have and I'm going to do my best. And like, truly, that's the only thing that you can do. Or I don't know, get out of the sport.
I don't think it needs to be a defeating thought. Like,
Exactly. I agree.
because here's the truth of the matter is you can control what you can control. Period. That's it. And if you're set on trying to control a bunch of things that are out of your reach, like you're setting yourself up with an unrealistic expectation of what that's going to look like anyways. So you can't just put yourself into the position of feeling unfulfilled with something because you're not somebody else. Like you are not supposed to be someone else. You are you, which I don't know how to say this. Like you're an individual. You're not like special. Like we're all just people, right? But you are an individual, and there is something special about that,
Yeah.
right? And so when you're consistently, if you're consistently trying to be somebody else, like you're taking away from like this really big part of your identity and personality that brings like fulfillment and joy and like allows you to like really dig deep and have fun in the process so much more.
Yeah. And I mean, I think something that I actually give as a recommendation to a lot of people is if you're finding that you are in that mental space, like you need to look at what you consume in terms of your social media, like environment, just people at the gym or like your social environment or whatever that is. A lot of times it is the social media aspect, and like curate your feed. So same thing is if you are in a diet and you're food focused, but all you look at is food pages and you're watching the Great British Bakery on Netflix. It's like if that's affecting you in a negative way, just stop it. Like hold off on it. Give it another time when we're not dieting, right? And if you're finding that you are following a lot of people that are quote unquote inspiring, but also you're finding that it's like negatively affecting how you look at yourself and your journey, then it's not inspiring. Like it's not helpful.
Right. It's defeating at that point.
Absolutely.
Because, and like, oftentimes we talk about like everybody else and outside influences. Very rarely do we talk about like in our inside influences. And those outside influences can impact that. But like if you're always saying, "Oh, I don't have this," or "Oh, I don't like this," or "Oh, I don't like that," like, dude, you're the only one that has any power to try and change that first and foremost. And you do yourself zero benefit by pushing yourself down all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for some of us, like the person that's literally the biggest asshole to us is ourselves. It's the way we
Oh
speak to
yeah.
ourselves, the way we think about ourselves, and the fact that we continue this like self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity. And secondly, yeah, like there are way better Noah Fielding shows that you can watch if you're dieting than the Bake Off, like Mighty Boosh. Like, let's go.
What's that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know.
Season 3 of Bridgerton. Come on.
Jesus Christ, no.
Yes.
What garbage.
I'm saving that for all my cardio sessions.
I like how I'm talking about the Mighty Boosh and I'm like, Bridgerton's garbage.
I don't know what the mighty what?
It's super weird. It's like weird and it has music and it's an old school like BBC show from the British Broadcast Channel.
I was gonna say BBC.
Not
Why did
like
I automatically think of the BBC when you said that? Because I thought of Top Gear,
yeah,
which is also a great show.
also a great show. Solid recommendations.
Yeah.
Like there's other things, you know what I mean? But like you also, that's what I mean though. You can't get so caught up in what other people are doing because one, again, if they got, you know, Jack Queen or whatever the royal flush hand or whatever the best hand to win is, and you got like a 2-7 off suit, like it's not, they can get away with doing stuff you can't. There are some people that they go in and put in very little effort and they're still going to grow in the gym and they're going to put on muscle because hey, genetically they're just that top 0.1%. And there's some of us where like if we do too much, like we're now not making progress because we're trying so hard that we're overdoing it, right? We're bypassing like what we can recover from and actually get benefit from. But we're doing all this work and we're like, yeah, I'm grinding so hard. And you're like, cool, are you making progress? They're like,
Yeah.
no. I was like, then why? Like, why not
No.
take a step back and rethink?
Yeah. No, I'm not progressing. Great. That's good. Awesome. Um, do we have anything else that we want to mention? Like anything else?
No, I didn't even want to be here in the first place.
Thanks. That's great.
It's not
I
you,
don't
it's
want,
me.
it's okay. Despite both of us like logging on to Zoom and being like, so like, what are we gonna talk about? Great. Like, I felt like this was actually really a positive, a deep one, but a positive one.
Yeah, I think it's a little different. Like don't get me wrong, I like the dynamic of having an extra opinion and like some extra dynamic there of insight. But I feel like sometimes when it's just one-on-one, it's easy to get into like the conversations really diving a little bit deeper into some things because it just allows you to continue maybe that same thought process a little bit longer.
Yeah, I agree. You have
Instead
like
of
more back and forth.
Yeah, instead of ADHD, Stephen, just coming in with jokes like 10 minutes after the fact. And that's all I've been thinking about is don't forget the joke, don't forget this joke, don't forget the joke. And people are like, you're not even funny anyways, man. What's your problem?
Totally out of context too.
Well, I mean, at that point, it's out of context, but 10 minutes ago, it would have been great. I just couldn't interrupt to say it.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
You're welcome.
You're you're welcome.